Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Very sadly, the last Book of Boba Fett episode review, at least for season 1. Before we get into today's video, I just want to thank everyone who joined me for my live reaction earlier this morning. I've decided to keep the live stream up, so if you want to watch through the episode and you haven't already, you can turn that on and it'll sort of be like I'm watching it with you. Alright, so with a spoiler warning, let's talk about the Book of Boba Fett episode 7. And I'm not going to lie, right off the bat, I am a little bit mixed on this episode. I think it was good overall, but there were some small and major issues that are worth discussing. I do want to say overall though that I love this season. I think I might make a dedicated video talking about the things that I really appreciated, but I think it's also true that the show was somewhat hampered by its format. First of all, I don't think 7 episodes was enough, especially given the fact that episodes 6 and 5 were essentially a completely different story. Now, I really liked the story that we got in those episodes, but I do think that they needed to either be a part of The Mandalorian Season 3 or a part of a much longer show. Part of the issue with the last episode is that it feels like there were bits and pieces that could have been more interesting had they been more developed. I really liked returning to the connection between Boba Fett and the Sand People, but they've been out of the show for so long now that at this point you can't help feel a bit divorced from those episodes. But more importantly, we have the Mod Gang and Black Chrysanthemum. These are characters that we care about a little, but I think the episode would be better had we spent more time getting to know them. This problem I think is tied pretty closely with the fact that the Book of Boba Fett was expected obviously to stand in as sort of a Mandalorian Season 2.5. My hope is that they go for a Book of Boba Fett Season 2 where the show is able to stand on its own a little bit more, where maybe the Mandalorian isn't necessarily included and we see Boba Fett working in the underworld, maybe visiting Nal Hutta or Nar Shaddaa, facing down against the Hutts, what have you. There were some other problems though that I think are worth mentioning. The episode, I think, lacked real direction, which is kind of surprising because at the beginning they seemingly set it up pretty well. They explained the sort of geography of the city, what each character will be doing. Then as things progressed, I think that sort of devolved into a bit more chaos. Now, some of that is natural because, well, it's a battle, but I think more generally a lot of the plot and the direction came to getting the characters together, having them running from some enemy, hiding behind cover until they were saved by whomever. Now, someone pointed out that this is very much like what the action is in A New Hope, and that's totally fair. That movie is basically the good guys standing there and exchanging shots with stormtroopers, and that's a lot of what we get in this, both from Mando and the Mandalorian and just the regular people. But I don't know, where it's so much of the episode, I don't think it's necessarily compelling, and there were also, I think, some continuity errors. The one that I definitely noticed the most was Black Chrysanthemum. He was in various states of injury. He would get shot 10 or 12 times, be limping, and then in the next section would be running away. I've heard there are other continuity issues. It just all felt a little bit sloppy, which is disappointing because in a way this season, especially Boba's plotline, has been building up to this big confrontation. I honestly don't know whether this is a writing issue or whether this comes down to Robert Rodriguez's direction, but I do think certain elements or certain episodes of this series have been more affected by this sort of feel, which is definitely hard to put into words. I, for example, really liked episode 2, and that felt a lot more put together compared to other episodes. But anyway, probably the thing that I took the biggest issue with though was the inclusion of Grogu. I found that a little bit frustrating because it almost feels like a bit of an invalidation of The Mandalorian Season 2, which was all about getting Grogu to Luke. They spent the whole season on that plot line. Obviously others developed and were found in the meantime, but it's definitely a bit disappointing to have the training end so soon. I also felt like Grogu was sometimes a stand-in for things that could have been done by other characters. I would have liked to see Boba be the one to calm down the Rancor, for example, as cute as it was seeing Grogu snoozing with him. And I guess I'm just a bit confused about how they're going to handle Season 3. Is it going to start off with the Mandalorian dropping Grogu back off at school? Or are they going to be back together and anyone who missed Season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett will just be left in confusion? I'm not sure. I definitely hope the former. Really, I hope Grogu does his own thing for a while, and I hope that means we get to see some diverse stories from the Mandalorian, but we'll see at some point. I am personally glad that Luke didn't go himself. I think he would have been a bit too overbearing for the story that was being told, especially considering the scale it's supposed to have. And yeah, I don't want to be too critical. There were just things about the episode obviously that I found frustrating and that I hope can be remedied if we do get a Book of Boba Fett Season 2. Alright, those are some of my criticisms. Let's talk about what I liked. First of all, Cad Bane. I thought he looked amazing in this episode, better even than last episode. I think that's probably because of the conditions he was in, a bit more natural than standing out in the middle of a bright desert. And I really liked his final duel with Boba. I'm glad glad that somebody acknowledged how stupid it is to be dueling a Mandalorian in full armor, but even so, he came close to winning. Some people are saying that he was done dirty in the show. I don't agree at all. He was totally badass. He took it to Boba Fett at the very ripe age of, what, 71 Enduros years? I think this was a much better final duel than what we got in the Clone Wars, and keep in mind, this is an end point for the character. I'm going to assume that he's dead. There is, I think, the possibility for him to return. They left it somewhat ambiguous with his what looks to be heart rate monitor still beeping, but I think he is going to be dead. However, that still gives a lot of time for stories set before, after, and during the Galactic Civil War. He could show up in Andor or Kenobi or any number of other projects. So I think that the character has a lot more potential now than he did in Star Wars Legends, or at least than he did under the proposed reels for the Clone Wars. Another thing I liked was the scene with the Rancor. It was awesome to see him parading through the streets. The visual effects on that were just amazing. It shows how far technology has come since Return of the Jedi, obviously, where the Rancor is kind of the slow lumbering beast who can only be filmed from certain angles. Now he's jumping off roofs, grabbing bad guys. It's pretty crazy. Speaking of, it was awesome to see the Annihilator droid, and I actually had thought that they'd appeared somewhere in the Star Wars movies. I thought you could see them somewhere in Revenge of the Sith, but no, this was actually the first time that the Annihilator droid made its way to Star Wars canon. The portrayal was amazing. I did a bit of research, and they came from concept art for episode 2, but hadn't appeared in the Clone Wars or anything before. They're totally frightening. I think maybe the shields were a bit too strong. We saw too many of characters trying to break through that. That's a pretty small complaint though. Overall though, really cool and surprising addition. Not going to lie, I was surprised by how the show ended with Fennec Shand absolutely destroying those Pike Syndicate officials and hanging the mayor, or killing him with the garrote wire. That was a lot more brutal than anything I was expecting to see in this show. But guys, those are my thoughts. Again, unfortunate to be a little mixed feeling about this episode, but I'm glad the show exists. Season 1 was great. Overall, I hope we do get a season 2. Let me know your thoughts though, not only on this episode, but the season and the show as a whole. I'll be reading all of your comments, and thanks again to people who tuned in to join me this morning. Till next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.